Child sexual abuse is a serious problem and likely the most underreported type of maltreatment and the most difficult to detect because it occurs in secrecy. Unless a child suffers significant injuries, there are eyewitnesses or evidence, all of which are uncommon. When researchers examine retrospective studies of adults, as well as information from identified child sexual abuse victims, they have found that a substantial number of children do not disclose abuse when it occurs. And unfortunately, delaying disclosure of abuse preserves the secrecy around the child's experience and possibly exposes the victim to repeated and ongoing maltreatment. In some cases, child abuse professionals and individuals serving on juries may believe the child is fabricating their experience if disclosure is delayed. So we have to ask ourselves, what keeps children from telling? Understanding the many reasons children do not disclose abuse can assist both the forensic interviewer as well as professionals involved in the investigation and ultimately the possible prosecution of an alleged offender. So let's first examine the idiosyncratic factors that belong to the child. What keeps them silent? So we have internalization of blame, where a child is feeling guilt, shame, embarrassment, or even responsibility, believing they either caused the abuse or they allowed it to happen because they did not disclose right away. Children also fear disappointing others, or there may be feelings that they are damaged goods, and this is especially true in cultures which prize female virginity. We also see some self-protective mechanisms where a child may minimize the abuse, or maybe they lose trust in others. They don't know who they can tell. We also have to consider the cognitive limitation of the child. Many have insufficient understanding of sexuality or confusion about what has really occurred. And age is definitely a factor in disclosure, with a number of disclosures increasing with children between the ages of 6 and 16, and then decreasing at the age of 16 as older children are likely to postpone disclosure, especially in cases of intrafamilial abuse. We must also examine and be attuned to the relational factors that impact a child's disclosure. If you have a child that lives in a family experiencing violence and dysfunction, the child may not feel safe in disclosing abuse. Maybe they fear no one will believe them, or perhaps they fear reprisals from the offender or others in the family. And children may fear the consequences of disclosure, with 70% of children ages 5 to 13 expecting negative consequences aimed at the self or the offender. And some children, especially older children, may believe that they can bear the abuse, in the mistaken belief that if the offender is abusing them, he or she will not abuse other children in the home. This is definitely a form of self-sacrifice that we frequently see in forensic interviews. Children can also live in families which have what we call the laws of silence, where children are taught not to tell others their business, keeping everything within the family. In addition, I think it's important to try and understand the relationship between the child and the offender. And as with all relationships, there's multiple facets. And as child abuse professionals, we have to understand those power dynamics within the relationship. So let's take, for example, a child and their grandfather. They may love their grandfather and they may love many of the things they do, but not the touching games he forces the child to play. As such, as interviewers, we must examine both the positives and the negatives of those relationships within the forensic interview. In essence, we are answering the question, why does the child keep going back, before it's ever asked. In about half of all cases, there may be meticulous manipulation of the child, the family, and the community, and targeting the nuances of manipulation during the interview helps children provide a more complete account of their experiences, while providing investigators a broader understanding of the reasons for delayed disclosure. Asking questions regarding victim selection or access can assist us in better understanding a child's experience during that initial phase of the manipulation process. So some questions we might ask: tell me about meeting so-and-so. What did you think about the first time you met him or her? How did you feel about this individual the first time you met him or her? And what are some of the things that you talked about or that you did together? What did your family or friends say about when you first met? And this is key. Did your feelings ever change over time? We also have to ask about differential treatment, any enticements, maybe some financial incentives, because we know that rapport and developing trust with children is a key aspect of the manipulation process. So asking these questions about, are they treated differently? Are there material enticements, financial incentives, or even special privileges should be covered in the interview. So some questions we could ask are, what kind of things did so-and-so first do with you? Did they give you or your friends something? And then that's a pretty direct yes/no question. So if yes, then utilize the pairing principle. Tell me about, let's say, Uncle Joe giving you some alcohol. And what did Uncle Joe say about your parents or your caretakers or others? Really looking at, is there a triangulation? What is this, the manipulator, the offender, saying about people that are significant to the child? Interviewers should explore children's decision-making processes regarding disclosure. And to better understand the challenges that children face, we need to ask the following questions. And this is key, I think, to every interview. Did you ever think about telling? And talk to me about thinking about it. And what kind of things made you think about telling? And, what kept you from telling someone? What happened that now you could talk about it? In order to understand a child's delayed disclosure, we need to explore what happened from the beginning of an offender's interactions with a child, what kept that child silent when abuse began, and what has now occurred that the child can disclose.